My great-uncle was killed in a shootout with police. It was devastating to our family. When people talk about the anguish of losing a family member in a confrontation with the authorities, well, I get that. When people are highly suspicious of the circumstances, when they just can't bring themselves to believe their loved one did something that would justify what happened, when their minds turn to conspiracies and police wrongdoing, that's a normal human reaction to tragedy. But no matter how much we empathize, we as a society must look at each case and ask what really happened. You can look to the facts, or you can be politically correct. Most people think political correctness is just an effort to avoid giving offense, and that the worst it can do is stifle debate. It's true it does that, but in fact, political correctness is much more sinister. It's a form of deception. The term has its origin among communists who believed that truth was whatever served the cause of the party and its patron, the Soviet Union. Pravda, translation truth, was, as you may recall, the name of the Communist Party's official newspaper in the Soviet Union. Everyone knew the paper was full of lies, yet in the communist sense, it was indeed truthful. It told the tales that advanced the cause. Let's take a look at one of the worst practitioners of political correctness in recent history, Al Sharpton. The Reverend Al became a national figure in 1987 after Tawana Brawley, a 15-year-old African-American girl, was discovered in a garbage bag, smeared in feces and with racial epithets written on her body in charcoal. Brawley claimed to have been raped by 6 white men, some of whom were police officers. Sharpton led protests and accused several individuals of involvement in the crime, including a prosecutor. He called New York Governor Mario Cuomo a racist and compared State Attorney General Robert Abrams to Hitler. Brawley's supporters suggested that the Mafia, the KKK, and the Irish Republican Army may have been involved. A grand jury looked at 250 exhibits and heard from 180 witnesses, more than 6,000 pages of testimony, and concluded that the whole thing was a hoax. Brawley had apparently written the epithets on herself, upside down, and smeared herself with waste from a neighbor's dog. Nobody knows for sure how the story got started, but apparently Brawley had defied her stepfather to see her boyfriend and was afraid of being punished by her stepfather, who had killed his first wife. Then, as the story gathered momentum, there was money to be had from lawsuits. Her mother later declared, "We should be millionaires." Plus, there's the fame and other rewards that often fall upon a supposed victim whose story advances a political cause. Despite the evidence, Sharpton continued to push the story. This is what political correctness looks like. It doesn't matter if the facts are true, so long as the narrative is important. In 1990, Sharpton supported a boycott of Korean-owned groceries in Brooklyn. During the boycott, a teenager smashed an Asian-American man's skull with a claw hammer, while onlookers chanted, "Koreans go home." The man was actually Vietnamese. Later, after a Hasidic Jew accidentally killed a black child in a car accident, Sharpton spoke at the child's funeral. He said that diamond merchants had blood of innocent babies on their hands and, quote, "If the Jews want to get it on, tell them to pin their yarmulkes back and come over to my house." In the riots inspired by Sharpton, 43 civilians and 152 police officers were injured, and a rabbinical student died with rioters chanting, "Kill the Jew." Then there was Freddy's Fashion Mart. Its landlord, who was black, raised the rent, and Freddy's passed along the rent increase to a black-owned music store. Sharpton called it racism, attacking the, quote, "white interloper." Protesters, inspired by Sharpton, yelled, "Burn down the Jew store." One of the protesters then shot 4 employees of Freddy's and set the store on fire. Finally, there's what happened in Ferguson, Missouri. The facts are that Michael Brown, age 18, robbed a convenience store. He roughed up an Indian-American store clerk half his size and walked away. Some 10 minutes later, Brown was confronted by a police officer, Darren Wilson, who was on the lookout for the robbery suspect. Brown assaulted Wilson and attempted to take the officer's gun, which discharged inside the police car. Brown, 6'4" and almost 300 pounds, ran, then turned around and charged the officer. Following investigation by the Obama Justice Department, the police officer was found to have been entirely justified in shooting Brown. The Justice Department examined all the witnesses, and those whose stories stood up to scrutiny, all African American, all backed up Wilson's version of events. Yet the tale spread that Brown was shot while holding up his hands in surrender, a story that originated with Brown's accomplice in the robbery, who was running away and didn't even actually see the fatal shot fired. Sharpton decided to get involved. He and his associates turned the hands up, don't shoot gesture into a symbol for alleged police abuses. It appeared in that context on national magazine covers, was replicated by performers at the Grammy Awards, was seen at Democratic Party meetings and countless protests, and became part of the national culture. Sharpton's reaction, ignoring the facts of the case, helped to stir up anti-police sentiment. 2 St. Louis area police officers were shot in revenge for Brown's death but survived. In New York City, 2 police officers were shot to death in revenge for the Ferguson incident and for the death of Eric Garner. In Houston, a sheriff's deputy was shot execution style while pumping gas. 5 officers killed in Dallas. Baton Rouge, 6 officers shot, 3 of whom died. Overall, in the first half of 2016, the number of police officers shot and killed up 44%. Today, despite all the lies, Sharpton is a major, respected figure in American politics. He has a show on MSNBC. Democratic presidential candidates are expected to campaign at his church. The current and previous attorneys general have spoken at his events, as have Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and President Obama. The magazine Politico declared Sharpton, quote, Obama's go-to man on race. Let's be clear. There was a time when police were sometimes the enemies of African Americans. Black men in the South were framed for crimes so they could be used as prison labor. Basically, that was an attempt to reconstitute slavery. There were police officers like Itchy Trigger Finger Nash in Georgia, who got an award from the KKK for killing blacks. And there were the officers in Mississippi who helped murder civil rights workers Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney. Unfortunately, I could go on and on. Suspicion of police in the African American community is completely understandable. But today, the percentage of police shooting deaths of African Americans is lower than the percentage of murders committed by African Americans and lower than the percentage of African Americans who are murder victims. 4 recent studies support the belief that in similar situations, police are now less likely to shoot or use lethal violence against an African American compared to someone in a different group. Again, with what happened to my family, I take the issue very seriously. My heart breaks for anyone who loses a loved one that way. However, as a journalist and a citizen, I want the narrative determined by the facts, never the other way around. When a PC narrative becomes the primary method of viewing the world, it can lead to dangerous false judgments of innocent people and lots of violence. Al Sharpton has demonstrated for us how this happens time and time again. If you like this video, please click the link on your right to read the full article on our website. Subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. I'm Dr. Stephen J. Allen. Thanks for watching.